this is a name that every time it's come up, you all have been. This has been 5 picks on each of you all's pick meter, and I know both you. I know KG has continued to put the caveat if he falls to the Lions.
Oh, if he falls, to me it's a no-brainer. But we will do, I think, a try to convince those who are non-believers, which I don't think there are many in this segment, that James Pearce, if he is available at 28, that is an advantageous pick for the Lions. And before I give my thoughts, I just want to read the mock-up that Mel Kiper Jr. wrote about James Pearce Jr. Pearce could be the answer opposite Aiden Hutchinson, which is, of course, what we all want. Besides figuring out how to stay healthy, the second edge rush spot was the Lions' biggest question last season. They traded for Zadarius Smith at midseason, and he ended up contributing with 4 sacks over 8 games. And as we all know, Zadarius Smith was released. Whether he re-signs on a more team-friendly contract, that is to be seen. But to get past their playoff slump, having a steadier presence rushing the passer on the other side of Hutchinson is key. Pearce had just 7.5 sacks in 2024, but his 19% pressure rate was second in the FBS. He keeps offensive tackles guessing with his burst and strength. And before I pass it over to KG, and before we later look at some highlights of James Pearce Jr., I've always said when it comes to prospects, especially ones that are high up, like a James Pearce Jr. who has a ton of upside, I want the production, I want the PFF metrics, and it also helps to show out in the combine. And of course, as we're going to talk about later, I want to see what you have in terms of what you've shown on tape. The production has been all there, and James Pearce Jr. has been a beast for 2 seasons. Over the last 2 seasons, 17.5 sacks, 28 tackles for loss, and 107 pressures. In terms of PFF grade, had a pass rush grade of 89, a run defense grade of 84, an overall grade of 87, this is in 2024, and an absurd pass rush win rate of 23%. And I think that correlates very nicely with his 19% pressure rate. Those definitely are correlation, that is for sure. And he actually, according to PFF and according to Sacks, had a better season the previous year in 2023, even though his 2024 season was great. And at the Combine, absolutely showed out. Ran the fastest edge rusher time of any edge rusher, 4.47 in the 40-yard dash. Was the fastest in the 10-yard split.
It's
his
like
40 time is faster than Christian McCaffrey's and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he was top 10 in the broad jump as well. When it comes to production, when it comes to metrics, when it comes to just what you've seen athletically at the Combine, he checks all of the boxes. But more on that from Mr. KG. What do you got to say about James Pearce Jr.?
Yeah, thank you, Samuel. I appreciate your breakdown there. And I know a lot of people are mocking him at 28, but I think that, if he's on the board in that maybe 10 to 15 range, I'm asking Brad Holmes to please move up and get this guy. Don't even leave it to chance, because I guarantee you he's a first-round talent. I don't care about the attitude issues. We'll go more into that a little bit later, but I think it's something that's being a little bit overblown. And when you just look at the kind of talent that this guy possesses, I really can't see teams passing up on him, especially getting into the second round. But that's just me, though. Quick write-up that I did on James Pearce. Of course, he stands at 6'5", 245 pounds. That's a pretty good size for an edge rusher, but he needs to put on a little bit more muscle, and that may be something that at the next level they try and work on. But the way his frame is set up, I think you can put on muscle without really slowing him down, because we all know that the speed is the most important part of his game and something that I'm necessarily fond of. But paired with his speed, that makes him a very elite prospect in this draft. You can argue that he's up there with Abdul Carter. Some may even say he's better in terms of pass rush than Abdul Carter, but Abdul Carter, he's a little more complete just all around. But you can make an argument for James Pearce. He had to earn his playing time as a true freshman in 2022. I believe that was. He got 2 sacks in his first season, but in 2023 is where he really exploded, where he had 28 total tackles, 10 sacks, 15 TFLs, a forced fumble, and an interception. Yes, I said an INT. And I believe that came as a pick 6 in the Citrus Bowl. It was a big play. It shifted momentum for Tennessee. In 2024, though, 38 total tackles, 7.5 sacks, 13 TFLs, a pass defended, and a forced fumble. And I know some of his numbers were a little bit more down, but we have to consider in 2024 he was getting a lot of attention from opposing offensive line. So as the main focal point for him to go out there and put up these numbers, I think that's pretty impressive. And just want to go into my pros and cons real quick. Definitely more pros than cons. After starting off as a raw talent, he quickly showed his range, being able to play in multiple techniques, and by that I mean just hand in the dirt on 2 and 3 point stances. And he has really great potential to maybe play in a 9 technique standing up. I would love to see whatever team he goes to utilize him in that way. He has the most explosive first step in this class, hands down, period. There's no argument there. He's capable of making tackles abandon their first move just in order to catch up with his speed, because he can just get around the edge so fast. And that's another thing I had wrote down here. Elite bend. Like, we thought James Houston had really good bend. It ain't nothing on James Pearce, bro. Like, he has an exceptional bend. He's capable of breaking contain at any time, and once he gets home, he knows how to finish, and that's something that you love to see.
Even at 6'5", 245, because James Houston was more 6'1". You're saying that this guy still has that type of ability with a much bigger, more physical frame.
Yeah, he's an athletic freak. And I think you got it. Once you see the tape, and we will play some highlights, you'll kind of see that on display. But one thing I really like about this guy is that he kind of plays off instinct, and you can kind of see that when you're watching the film. He's not really thinking too much when he's out there, but it's not clunky. It's very fluid. It's almost seamless in the way that he's able to like change direction, the way he can adjust on screen plays, or maybe even cutting off a running lane. You want to see him get a little more polished in the run game, and more on that in a little bit. But he doesn't make too many mistakes in pass rush situations, so you love to see that out of a young player. Like I said, not completely polished in the run game, but he's capable of cutting off rushing lanes. He's good at diagnosing screens as well, has pretty solid lateral movement. My cons against him, of course, the biggest question is his strength. At the next level, against longer, maybe even stronger tackles, he could get hung up there. That could present a problem because he's somebody that, tends to rely on his speed a little bit too much, and we all know he's an athletic freak. He can use that speed, but at the next level, you have to get a little more craftier. But I think that's something that these NFL defenses will work with him on. He struggles with zone running schemes and pulling guards, and that's another thing he's going to have to clean up very, very quickly at the next level, because if that's your weakness and you're out there on early downs, teams will just run at you. They'll just run the ball straight at you, and he needs to have answers for that. But I would like to see him develop in that area, and also just developing secondary moves. His hand moves are already kind of underrated, for him being at this level. But if he can develop a secondary or maybe even a third counter move for when his initial move gets stalled at the next level, I think that'll go a long way. And he needs to work on his over pursuits, and that's something that I was very critical of Aiden early in his career on, because a lot of times he would get in the backfield, he would get home, but the over pursuit would allow, any type of quarterback, especially a mobile quarterback, to kind of get out the pocket and make plays off schedule. So that's something that you want to see him clean up. But overall, just for the talent that you're getting, I would love to see the Lions move up and get this guy. I don't think he falls to 28. This is a pick situation for me. You already know that. But we got the highlights, and we will run the tape, and I'll let y'all decide for yourselves.
Hey, but first, I want to hear from Justin, because I know you're a junkie when it comes to college football, the draft, college basketball, more on that later. So do you have any words on James Pearce Jr.?
Yeah, I personally love James Pearce Jr. I agree with both of you that this is a run-up to the board and pick him immediately type of situation. And I agree with everything KG just said. The 2023 tape really jumps out.
Yes.
He is an absolute difference maker there. He's always in the backfield, but he still had games like that in the 2024 season. In particular, there was the Alabama game where he put Jalen Milroe into a tizzy, the way that he was uncomfortable back there, constantly in the backfield making plays. And the one thing that he improved on in the 2024 season that really impressed me was his run defense. I know he has struggled in the zone schemes, but he has improved in his ability to play the run. And with him being an athletic freak, with him being able to rush the passer, and with him improving on his defense, he seems like a complete Brad Holmes guy that with the athletic build, I would really love this pick. And I feel like this is an exact pair that you could put with Hutch where they're similar, but the speed that James Pearce Jr. has will give you that variation on both sides of the edge, which I think is very important.
I think James Pearce Jr. is going to step into the NFL no matter who picks him. Hopefully it's the Lions, and be able to win one-on-ones against NFL tackles just based off of his speed and his burst.
Yeah.
It's absolutely elite. And I have some highlights on James Pearce Jr. that we should all take a gander at and make some comments on. So, JB, this is the first one. Wins a rep to the inside, just buries the quarterback and just just
so
at the speed
fast.
of light. Look at this.
Soft speed and
My
Look at how
goodness.
his closing
Absolutely
speed
beautiful.
is
And
crazy.
this one, club swims to the middle, gets the quarterback in just a nanosecond, it appears. This one, bull rush. When we talk about strength, bull rushes the tackle into a sack. Right here, chases this one right here. He stunts to the inside, buries the running back
able to
for
diagnose and
look at this. Running start, no chance. To the inside, buries the quarterback. Beautiful. Chases the running back from the backside after winning his rep. Right here, he's going to line up more on the inside. Stunts to the middle, buries the running back for no gain. Right here, it looks like he's used more as a blitzer. Finishes the sack, cleans it up. And on this last one, he pressures and the quarterback is forced to get rid of the ball before he wants to. You can cut that right now, JB. It started over. But James Pearce Jr., his speed, his ability to just get to the quarterback. You even saw some pass rushing moves, which is something that is perceived as a weakness. I saw a pretty nice swim move. I saw him
it's underrated.
I saw him win some reps against tackles by going to the inside and across their face, which is the quickest way to the quarterback. And to me, I know that a lot of people have been upset with me because I have had more questions about the offseason than some. There are some moves that I don't agree with. There were some lack of moves that I wanted the Lions to make. Like, I wish they wouldn't have released Zadarius Smith, and I wish they would have, and I'm not saying for sure that they didn't. When the Eagles got Aziz at 1 for 4, I was like, damn, I probably would have given him 1 at 7. But if somehow, some way, Brad Holmes is able to make James Pearce Jr. a Lion, especially if it's at 20 freaking 8, I will shut the fuck up. I will shut the fuck up. I will be like, yes, Master Holmes. Because I think that James Pearce Jr. has the second highest upside in terms of pass rushers in this draft next to Abdul Carter. I think in the situation, if you put James Pearce Jr. opposite Aiden Hutchinson, I think there's a chance that he starts and gets significant snaps right away. And I think that he is a viable defensive rookie of the year candidate if you put him in Detroit where he can just feast off of one-on-ones. Bring James Pearce Jr. home.
Yeah, Hutch has never played with the athlete, the level of a James Pearce Jr. And you saw the success that James Houston was able to have playing next to Hutch. Just imagine this guy. Like, he is James Houston times 3, if you ask me. And one thing that is going to be a question at the next level is, can he play on early downs? Because, like we said, the run game isn't completely polished. He does do some good things there. He does have potential to stun as well, which is good. But you want to see him just be a little more polished in the run game. And his pro comparison was Brian Burns, and I think that's a real good comparison because you can use him in pass rush situations to start and then just work on his ability in the run game and bring him along slowly. But his potential as a pass rusher is undeniable.
Yeah, 43 QB hurries last year. Even though his sack numbers were down, getting more attention like that, I think that really shows the quality of a player that he is. And just the athletic upside is exactly what Brad Holmes seems to like to draft. So I completely agree with KG.
Yeah, because
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the only reason that somebody like that would ever fall to 28 is he has some perceived character flaws that allegedly reared their ugly head at times at Tennessee. And in my personal opinion, I think that if he were to fall to 28, and I've alluded to this before with, I think, him being a potential defensive rookie of the year candidate, if James Pearce falls to 28, you could argue that he's a top 10 talent going at the latter end of the first round of the draft. Because I don't know if you guys remember, I'm a sicko, so I do. At the beginning of the season, before any games had been played, when you looked at the PFF big board, you would see a big fat James Pearce Jr., not his stature in terms of his name, right up there at like 1 or 2. this guy is elite. And I know that his counting stats and even his metrics to some degree went down a little bit this year, but James Pearce Jr. has produced both of the years that he has played. And to Justin's point, he did improve his run defense. You saw some run defense on those highlights.
Yeah, you did.
Saw him stunt to the middle and just bury running backs. You've seen it. You saw him chase down a running back really from the backside and prevent any sort of reverse field. So James Pearce Jr., the man can play. I want him in the Honolulu Blue.
Personally, I don't want to hear about attitude problems. Abdul Carter had a whole fucking assault charge, and he's probably going number one. Or he definitely will be top three. So I'm just saying, like, come on now.
They can choose their spots.
Like, come on.
And for me, it's like, if it's just a notion of young players needing to mature through mistakes, that's something that the Detroit Lions have already shown that their organization is capable to do. Obviously, there's a certain class of player or an individual that they want within their organization. And I guess to this point, for all intents and purposes, James Pearce Jr. isn't somebody that I would believe is off of their radar. And what just jumps off the screen to me, looking at the tape, hearing what you guys are saying, is really the speed in which he's able to diagnose and get home as well. The ability to stop the run from the outside, but like you said, get over into the middle. And that, to me, is where I know that a lot of attention is going to be placed on his ability to be a really good athletic freak of a bookend with Hutch. But that's why I'm glad that they do have kind of the veteran presence they do along their defensive line in the interior and everything behind it. Generally, we talk about how the secondary is helped by the defensive line. But when you're talking about a player that you're looking to make some improvements and some adjustments and some growth and to improve on their technique, some of the things that KG pointed out in the weaknesses, that's where I do believe having the linebacker core and the leaders that you do behind you, like Alexander Zeloni and Jack Campbell, having Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch back there in the secondary, and giving the quarterback something else to think about, and knowing that you have that much more help behind you, that to me is where a player like a James Pearce is able to effectively hit the ground running a lot better than they would if you went to maybe another organization.
Well, and you can look at the perceived character issues in a couple of different ways. You can look at it as, oh, you don't want him to pollute the locker room. I will say pollute the locker room in quotes. Or you could look at it as, if you trust the Lions culture, if you believe in what they've built, if you blow your wad over Pat O'Connor signings because he's a culture guy, then hey, he should be able, like, the Lions culture should be able to handle a James Pearce Jr. and mold him and make him an effective player. And that leads to this point, and I want to ask KG and Justin, if James Pearce Jr. falls to 28, and the only reason I'm asking this is because Mel Kiper Jr. mocked it, and say what you want about him, he kind of invented this as a business, or started it as a business in terms of draft coverage. If he falls to 28, is this a move that you think Brad Holmes would do in terms of drafting James Pearce Jr.?
Yeah, because if one player can pollute your locker room, do you really have a strong locker room? Like, the Lions have worked hard to build this culture over this last 4 years to the point where they're very selective in who the hell comes in this building. Dave said it. Not everybody can play for the Lions. Not everybody can be in Allen Park. And I do respect that part about this franchise. But at some point, you have to test how good your culture is. And if you can bring a guy like this in who has perceived attitude problems, which you can easily point to, okay, maybe he just wasn't getting along with coaches at Tennessee, or maybe, he had some ideas of how he could be utilized and he was being mismanaged a little bit. There's a lot of reasons that you can point to as to why the attitude problems may have come up, but I don't think that's a big issue. The talent outweighs all of this, and you bring a young guy in with the veterans that you have in this locker room, with the kind of coaches that you have in this locker room. I don't think it's a problem at all, and I don't think that would deter Brad from picking him at 28 or maybe even possibly moving up for him.
Justin?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that he just pops off the tape in a way athletically that it seems like one of those Brian Branch moves. He falls way too far in the draft, falls all the way down to 28, and Brad Holmes is just sitting there licking his chops over the fact that he fell that far, and it's a perfect dad, in my opinion, to pair with that Aiden Hutchinson.
Hey, and when I heard, and I think it was from you, KG, that people are saying that James Pearce Jr.'s pro comp is Brian Burns, I can understand why some are asleep on Brian Burns, because he's played his entire career with Carolina and then last year with the Giants. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of winning was going on, but Brian Burns has been arguably a top 10 to 15 edge rusher in the NFL for the last couple of years. And he was good last year. Remember, the Giants didn't lose because of their D-line. Their D-line was the only thing on that team that they really had. They lost because they focused so much on their D-line that the whole rest of their team was ass. So if you're telling me that at pick 28 you get a Brian Burns type player, whether I agree or disagree, that's his perfect comp, that's a win. That's having somebody with that type of talent, somebody with a James Pearce type of talent on a rookie contract with the potential for a fifth-year option. Like I said, if Brad Holmes is able to get this done, I will take back every perceived negative thing that I've said about this offseason. Like I said, I will bow at his feet because James Pearce Jr. is an elite talent, and he will benefit heavily from having Aiden Hutchinson on the other side, heavily, as anybody would. But James Pearce Jr. facing one-on-ones with that kind of speed, sometimes against mid-tackles, are you kidding me? It's over.
I'm looking forward to it, man. This draft, this is one of the things that, as the offseason continued to progress, it continued to ring as it should always. Trust in Brad, because whether it is James Pearce Jr. or not, I know that this is a draft that presents an opportunity for him to cook up and to be able to, at the very least, make sure that rotation, that depth is in place while you're waiting for guys like Aleem to get healthy and back into the natural swing of things. But I'm pumped up for what this Alliance team can do here because of the fact that it's still a 15-2 team. It's still a team with high expectations, and none of that has gone away. Sometimes I feel like we or some of the fans out there have put them in a vacuum, when in reality they should be assessed as it relates to who they actually are. And that's one of the top teams in the NFC. You get a chance to add a talent like this to it. You guys have covered it very, very well. You get an opportunity to have somebody to go back there and make some noise. The pressures in college that Justin brought up versus what he's able to do along this defensive line, and where opposing offenses are going to have to scheme for pressures from different, maybe different levels of the defense sometimes. That's where a guy like a James Pearce Jr. could probably see the sacks in terms of his pressure start to rise as well. So looking forward to it, man.
Looking forward to it. Hopefully it happens. There's other good options as well, but in terms of upside, I don't think there's anybody in the entire draft that you could get at 28 better than James Pearce Jr., but we shall see. There's certainly a good chance that other teams will realize that are picking ahead of the Lions, and maybe the Lions have to trade up. I will say this, though. If the Lions pass on him and the Eagles get a hold of James Pearce Jr., I think I'll cry on draft.
Why you got to bring that up?
Like,
I shouldn't have. I know, but we all know that it's possible.
What if you're talking trade? Because I know KG mentioned it earlier. If he's sitting there at 15th, even he would see about trading up.
Yes, bro.
What about you, Flannel Sam?
Yes, I would definitely consider it. In terms of edge rushers, the three that I would trade up for, and I'm not saying this is necessarily realistic. I would trade up for Abdul Carter, although Abdul Carter might go top 1, at worst probably top 5. I would trade up for James Pearce Jr., and I would probably consider trading up for Mike Green as well. But we shall see. Mel Kiper is saying that